The silence before the storm. For years he had carried the weight of the world on his shoulders. Pope Francis, the people's pope, humble, gentle, and profoundly aware of the cracks forming beneath the ancient walls of the church. He listened. He prayed. He watched as scandals unfolded like storms over a fragile ship, and he stayed silent. Until now. Whispers in the halls. The Vatican at dawn was a place of surreal peace. The ancient corridors glowed under the dim light of old chandeliers, their golden arms stretching like weary hands toward the heavens. Inside a small private chamber, Pope Francis sat alone, sipping bitter coffee. His eyes were sunken, not from age, but from sleepless nights. He had been warned many times. Your Holiness, silence protects the Church. Your Holiness, speaking out could cause a collapse. But how long could silence be called virtue when the truth begged to be spoken? From across Europe, reports had flooded in. Priests accused of betrayal, the innocent silenced, the faithful losing faith. He remembered a letter from a young woman named Elena, written with trembling hands. Holy Father, my brother trusted the Church, but the Church betrayed him. Will you ever speak for people like him? The words haunted him. That morning, Pope Francis decided. The time for silence had ended. A meeting like no other word spread quickly through the Vatican. The Pope had called for a secret gathering. Cardinals, bishops, advisors, the most powerful men in the Church were summoned, their faces tight with worry. As they filed into the great marble chamber, Francis stood at the front, not behind a grand podium, but at the edge of the steps, close to them, eye to eye. The room fell silent. And then, in a voice that trembled but never broke, Pope Francis said, "We have failed." Murmurs erupted instantly. He raised his hand. Not because we are bad men, but because we are men who feared the truth more than we feared injustice. He walked slowly among them, his simple white robes brushing the polished marble. We built walls when we should have opened doors. We protected power when we should have protected the wounded. We spoke in riddles when we should have shouted from the rooftops. One bishop, face pale, dared to speak. Holy Father, the damage could be irreversible. Francis smiled sadly. The damage was done the moment we chose comfort over courage. The secret letter. Before the meeting ended, Pope Francis pulled out a single piece of paper. A letter, handwritten, trembling slightly in his hand. It was from a small parish priest in Argentina, a man who had once served under Francis, when he was still Archbishop Jorge Bergoglio. The letter was simple, but devastating. Dear Holy Father, I no longer know how to defend the Church. People see the hypocrisy, and they turn away. We have lost their trust. What shall we do? Pope Francis looked into the eyes of the men before him and said, We must stop defending walls. We must walk among the ruins. Only there will we find Christ again. There was silence, heavy, uncomfortable, real. Some of the cardinals shifted uneasily. Others bowed their heads. For the first time in many years, the ancient walls of the Vatican did not feel invincible. They felt vulnerable, human. The public revelation won. Month later, on Easter Sunday, the world turned its eyes towards St. Peter's Square. Thousands gathered under the warm spring sun. Millions watched from around the world. The Pope stepped onto the balcony. He spoke not of victory, not of the grandeur of the Church, but of wounds, of failures, of a desperate need for healing. We have been shepherds who ran when the wolves came, he confessed. We have been gatekeepers when we should have been door openers. Gasps rippled through the crowd. Some wept. Some stood in stunned silence. And then something extraordinary happened. From the front rows, a group of survivors, those hurt by the Church's past failures, stood up, and Pope Francis, breaking with centuries of protocol, descended from the balcony. He walked straight into the crowd. He embraced them, one by one. He whispered, "I am sorry. Forgive us. You are not forgotten." The whole cameras flashed wildly. The world watched, astonished. The aftermath. The days that followed were not easy. Some hailed Pope Francis as a prophet of courage. Others called him reckless, a threat to the stability of the Church. But he was unmoved. He began sweeping reforms, greater transparency, harsh punishments for abuse and cover-ups, empowering the laity, especially women, to hold leadership roles, a call for every priest, every bishop, every believer to walk humbly with the broken. He received thousands of letters, some angry, some tearfully grateful. A mother from Ireland wrote, "For the first time, I believe the Church sees my son. Thank you, Holy Father." A retired bishop from Italy wrote, "You have wounded us to heal us. I pray history will understand." Epilogue. A Pope and a Prayer. Late one evening, long after the crowds had gone and the cameras had turned away, Pope Francis knelt alone before a simple wooden crucifix. He did not pray for victory. He did not pray for praise. He prayed for strength to remain small in a world that loved grandness. He prayed for courage to keep speaking when silence would be easier. And he prayed for the Church to find its way back, not to power, but to love. The old walls of the Vatican stood around him, ancient and scarred, but inside those walls, a revolution of humility had begun. And it had started not with anger, nor with judgment, but with one simple act, breaking the silence.